Hello, Pretty Casual Gaming. Today we're doing A Realm Revisited, a podcast about Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. As always, I'm Tehnoobcake, and with me is Slandy.
Hello.
And as always, now is with me Logix.
Hello.
And with us is special guest, TheDevinAspect.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being with us. First, we'll give you a little chance to introduce yourself and tell our watchers what it is you do.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I'm the TheDevinAspect. I mainly stream on Twitch, playing a lot of Final Fantasy 14, as well as some other games, but that has been pretty much my main focus that I've been doing.
Can't blame me for that. Good game to stream. So our plan today is to talk, obviously, as we said, about A Realm Reborn. Each of us have all probably finished it at different periods of time and experienced it all differently.
Yes.
But for instance, Logic literally just finished it last night, and I helped him with that. Our first plan, however, is to watch a Flames of Truth trailer to give people who maybe are watching this on YouTube or even on Twitch a chance to have a look at the trailer for the whole expansion in case they don't really know what we're talking about or are coming at this at a later point. So if everyone wants to quickly pop that up on YouTube and let me know that they've got it up, and then I will tell when to play it. Everyone got it up?
Yep, got it.
Sandy?
Yes.
Right, let's watch this in 3, 2, 1. Let's play. So, have any of you actually watched this one before?
I haven't.
It's just me and you, Devin. I love this song.
Played this on loop quite a bit when I first heard it.
I've heard this song maybe a million times because I love watching people react to the different trailers. So I've probably seen every single Final Fantasy trailer about 100 plus times.
So good.
So I hope you've got the music playing through the screen, Sunday.
It says it is.
whenever I listen to this, I get the pause on it. Yeah. One of the best Final Fantasy songs.
Makes me wish issues point out to this because this is played. This specific trailer, but this part was still played.
Yeah, if you've done the coils of the hammer. Logic's actually seen this part, I think.
Yes.
But I don't think Slandy has.
I actually didn't see this trailer for the longest time. And when I found it, was like, what?
This whole scene just makes the whole thing even better. The slowness, the rapid, the slow, the rapid. Kicked it off so well. There it is, down the back of the neck.
Man, I love this one so much.
Yeah, no matter how many times I've seen that, it will never get boring to me. As I said, I think to this day it's probably one of the best, if not still my favorite Final Fantasy XIV trailer that there is. It just was so epic, especially at the time it came out. Like this is, like 8 years ago, and then the original probably would have been about 9 years ago, maybe. I can't remember exactly when they shut the
I
servers down.
forget the timing because I I don't remember when the coils came out. That when that was completed, and that was the scene that played for a lot of people. Because you don't get that last part with Louis Soir and that battle. Because one of the things I love about that trailer is that because if you watch the original, you only get like, okay, so Bahamut destroyed everything. Our heroes are now in the Realm Reborn. This shows that Louis Soir won the battle against Bahamut, and so I think that is what really sets the tone, especially if you get to play coils. To like get all of that story that for a long time a lot of people didn't have a resolution for, and it's one of my favorite trailers. And I hope we get something like that impactful again in the future with the game.
Especially with Endwalker coming up, I feel like that'd be a prime
Right.
time to do something like that.
I really hope so, considering they said, like, unlike the other games, Endwalker's the story's going to resolve at the end of 6.0. It's not going to be something like 6.1 or 2 as the previous games have done. So I'm hoping that time with them can give us something like that again. That's what I'm really hopeful for.
Especially with Charlene coming up, it will be a perfect time to explore more about Louis Soir. But before getting into the future, we need to talk about the past. So I think it would be first great to know, when was it that all of us actually finished A Realm Reborn? I'm going to start with myself because obviously I'm talking. So I finished A Realm Reborn during A Realm Reborn because obviously the main reason that we need to talk about this is because the game has changed substantially over the years, and how even just how A Realm Reborn plays. Like how Logix has played through the story is not the same as how I did it because I played it so long ago. But a lot of the like user-friendly systems that we have in place now, and even some of the quests are gone because of A Realm Revamp. And so A Realm Reborn back then, obviously, one of the big things that I took away from how people experience it now compared to how I experienced it is that people are now so caught up on trying to get to Heaven's Ward because they've all been told it's great in Heaven's Ward. That's when you're going to get the good story. Whereas I experienced it much differently because I didn't know Heaven's Ward was coming. I just had A Realm Reborn and I had to experience it like that. So that's something obviously we'll move into a bit more into the podcast. I'm going to let Logic say when he finished it because we've already basically touched up on it.
Yeah, so I finished it yesterday.
Quite literally last night.
Fresh.
Yeah. In fact, to be fair, he actually finished it today because it was past midnight. So
Yeah, technically.
Slandy, when did you actually do A Realm Reborn?
That is a good question. I think around when they announced Stormblood.
Oh, so about middle way, really.
Yeah, because I remember playing Realm Reborn, and I just wanted to catch up to Heaven's Sword first time.
This is exactly what I was saying.
And I think it was doing while I was doing a Reborn, they announced the Stormblood expansion. So I can't remember what year that was, but around that.
I think Stormblood was 20. I want to say 2017, so it would probably be around 2016, 2017 time you finished it.
Yeah.
And Devin, when was it you went for Realm Reborn?
So when I started it was when the Rogue Ninja class was just about to release. But when I came back and played it, because I wasn't playing on computer at the time, I finished it. Let's see, I came back kind of towards the end of Stormblood and finished it like right around Shadowbringer's announcement. I want to say, I'm trying to remember because I streamed it. And that's when I really started picking up with some friends on Final Fantasy 14 again because I had a computer I could actually play it. So it's about it was been about 2 years ago I think I finished it. But I played A Realm Reborn quite a bit back before Heaven's Word as well. So seeing it then versus when I finished it were also very different games.
Yeah. Like it really is strange that like it is the same game, but it was just so different as well.
It had a different feel for sure. The part I think why the gap for me was I was playing on PS4. I waited till I got PS4 because I wanted because I was grabbing that, and then they released it on there, and then it was still just like I couldn't get used to the controller, and so that's when I got a computer that can play it because I had a potato computer that could only play WoW. That's the reason why there's a gap, and then finally a friend's joined in. I got a computer that could actually handle it, and just went full steam ahead since then, and just yeah.
So what I wanted to touch up as well is what people felt like the first time going through it, how they experienced it, and that lot. I'm going to start with Logic's because he has the most fresh experience of it, so his memory is probably the best for it.
You mean the entire A Realm Reborn campaign, right?
Yes. None of the side content yet. We've got that later to talk about.
Well, I mean, it was good. It has its slow moments, but then it sort of makes up for them, I think. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it, really. It's worth playing. It certainly kept my interest just enough, and at some points more than just enough, but then, like I say, it has its slow moments as well. You just have to get through those.
I think for a lot of people, just enough is probably their sentiment on A Realm Reborn, especially for those of them who've actually gone on to do Heaven's Ward and Shadowbringers, because obviously you haven't even touched into Heaven's Ward yet, you just got into Ishgard, so you still have a lot more to experience. Slandy, what was your experience with Realm Reborn? Because I already know what you've said to me and how you played it, so this is going to be interesting.
What is it? Space? Fun? And click yes? Okay. When I actually started the game, I came straight from World of Warcraft, and how the story is told in World of Warcraft compared to Final Fantasy, it is a lot different. And also the environment and everything, it was quite new to me. I'm not actually used to the Japanese style of game. So it took a lot of time for me to actually get into the story, and most of it was like getting into the combat system and the UI and everything at first. And I must admit, it was only between the middle and the end I actually managed to get a little bit into the story, and I actually didn't get fully invested into it before Heavensward. So my idea is actually to, when I finish the Shadowbringers main quest scenario completely, I have the plan to actually go back using the New Game Plus to actually play it through completely again from the bottom, and not skipping. Yeah, probably this time. And I do remember that when I played it, okay, I missed a lot of story, and it was annoying me actually, and I actually had hope for how the game is turning. It continues, like, it doesn't bring like a completely new subject in an expansion. It carries over from the past experience, and when I got into Heavensward, I was like, no, I still missed stuff. I still missed stuff, and that annoys me. And then I slowly started streaming the game, and I stopped cutting into the cutscenes and everything, and I got more invested into it and stuff. So
I'm going to go to you now, Devin. What was your first experience of A Realm Reborn?
So, going to my very first experience, I'm also like, I haven't played a lot of Final Fantasy games, but I do have my favorites, and I really do love them. I love that it was a Final Fantasy game feel a little bit. Although I did go in with my World of Warcraft mindset, because I was, God, when did I play that? I forgot what expansion was out at the time, and I was trying to hop back in. But I was like, okay, this is cool. And I remember the only thing that frustrated me was the controller. And I was like, I'm just going to wait to get on PC whenever I get it, when I get a good enough computer. But I at least to my.
Why didn't you just plug a keyboard and mouse in your PlayStation? That's what I do.
I don't know if that was capable at the time, or I just never thought that. I also had a really bad laptop, so like it basically was made. WoW was the only computer game I played, and then I played mostly console at the time. It's a very different story today, but it was really cool when I got my first chocobo at the level 20. It's just I kind of put it down. It's like I want to play it on PC. I really feel like I'm gonna enjoy that. I had a big WoW mindset though going into it, and then when I came back into it, and a couple friends, one of my friends that plays with me, she has kind of got us all in it, and then me and her have basically been the one sticking with it the whole time. Is when we really were like, I was like, oh no, I'm really getting to the story. I want to say it was like level 30. I can't remember exactly the quest where the story really picked up, and I was like, I'm locked in to what's going on here, and then just to kind of, for those looking forward to it, like even when you get to play Logics, I don't want to spoil too much. When you get to play through Heaven's Word, it really made A Realm Reborn very, very worth it. And I appreciated it even more because it ended on such a good note. And then it was like, oh wow, that whole thing had a lot of meaning. So the whole experience with Realm Reborn, I still, as much as people will be like, oh, it's slow, or it's not as good, it's like it's actually very good. The content later just gets really, really, really good. And so I just loved everything about just that journey. And the more I got into it, the more Final Fantasy it started to feel, and the more it separated me from the idea of like other MMOs or even World of Warcraft mindset. And that was pretty much where I was like, I'm locked in. This may be my new MMO. And 2 years later, here I'm still going strong on grinding stuff from old content to the newest stuff. So had to go back and play Coils to figure out that's where that trailer came from. And I was like, oh, I need to go back and play that now, and knowing exactly all that content.
Well, my experience, I think, is a lot different to a lot of people because I was I was sort of a WoW refugee, as they're called, but I also wasn't because I came into Final Fantasy when it was 1.0 and I gave it a try there. The funny thing is, Final Fantasy 11 I'd not actually given a go until after Final Fantasy 14 1.0 because I had always said a Final Fantasy MMO as a kid, that sounds stupid. And then I gave 1.0 a try because my relationship with World of War, I have played World of Warcraft from vanilla all the way up until I think I quit in BFA. So I've had that WoW relationship, but I also have always had an off relationship with it. Even in the days where it was in its prime, where everyone praised it for being good, I've always experienced it WoW in a very like toxic relationship kind of way. Like I've always struggled to enjoy a lot of the content, and so I've always had this search for another kind of, because I love MMOs in that I love the idea of being able to just continuously for years input into this one character and collect more stuff and keep going, and there's more content. And so I came into FF14 1.0. I was like, fuck it, I'm going to do away with my preconception that Final Fantasy cannot be an MMO, because I was a Final Fantasy fan before I was a WoW fan. So I came into 1.0, and 1.0 obviously is a disaster, everyone knows it. And so I came back into 2.0 like, I'm going to give it a shot. 1.0 is a complete disaster, screw that game. But I've got my legacy stuff. I get the sub reduction. That was on a different account to what I'm using now because of login problems that I've had. But I did A Realm Reborn whilst it was A Realm Reborn. Whilst we didn't have any of these decent systems that make the game a lot more friendly for new players. And as I say, we didn't have this whole preconception that a lot of players now have it, where they're going, got to get to Heaven's Ward because everyone says that's where it gets good. Got to get to Shadowbringers because that's when everyone says it's amazing. It was just we was experiencing A Realm Reborn as A Realm Reborn, which I think actually has changed my perception of it compared to a lot of people I see now. Because this whole mindset of you've got to get to Heaven's Ward makes no sense to me. Especially as a lore person, A Realm Reborn is where you build up the world. It's a lot of stuff that's built for it to pay off later, which I thought was great. But even then, like the primals, the first time I saw Ifrit, one of the best, Ifrit's lame compared to what we've seen now, but for me at the time, experiencing Ifrit for the first time, and even the system of trials, I loved it. I thought it was great. Just you've got a boss in front of you, it's really cool, and you go and kill it. And I thought it was great.
I think trials was a big selling point for me too. I agree with that because it's like, unlike Warcraft, where you go into a dungeon or a raid, that's pretty, and then you have to go to the boss. But trials is like the boss is right there. There's mechanics, and it's all about you and your team taking it down, which was another big selling point. And Ifrit was one of my favorite summons from like Final Fantasy VIII and 10, and I was like, we're fighting him at 20. Oh wow. So I completely agree with how you perceive that there's so much to, especially for Final Fantasy nerds, to experience with Realm Reborn and really appreciate. as you are going to see those things from A Realm Reborn come up later. It's going to pretty much be important in some way.
Yeah, I mean, look at the Ascian storyline. We've had this since The Realm Reborn. We've had so many characters. I'm not going to go too much into the storyline because, as we said, Logic hasn't actually finished the whole game yet. So there's a lot of spoilers within the whole Ascian storyline. But even they were so cool to me, especially Elidibus, like, because obviously you had La Habrea, the typical Disney villain, who in fairness has a lot of good lore to him, but his in-game representation sucks. And he did all of his stuff, and then you go into the post-patch quests, which are really good, and like Elidibus comes along like, La Habrea was an idiot. What was he doing? And then you got the primals, they were so cool. Shiva was amazing when I first did her. There's just so much about A Realm Reborn that I still hold very much to my heart. A Realm Reborn didn't make me come to Final Fantasy permanently. I still had this on-off relationship with WoW, but it was the beginning of me finally being able to kind of put WoW down and move to something else. So I will always appreciate Realm Reborn for giving me the gateway to what I now consider as my MMO, and I will always love that for that. And I adore the story and everything in it. I think it gets a bad rep these days that people say, "Oh, you've just got to get to Heavensward. Just skip through it, just rush through it." It's like, no, you should.
I think that's just the easiest thing to say for those slow moments, like Logic said. There's some slow moments, and there are, but it's like there's so much in those moments that build up the other ones. Like that first time I got to, it's around level 30 quest, I think, where just something happens, and I was sitting there, the music changed. It was not a music I heard before, and I was like, oh, what is going on? And it really dialed me in that, okay, there's things like this that happen while the other stuff built up that world for me. And then like the early levels are really making sure here's how to play the game, here's these mechanics, here's these different features. It slowly introduces you to the glamour system, which my friend, she hopped in that like as soon as she unlocked it, it was just, I was like, level up, you get more gear. And so, but she was like, I need my character to look pretty. It was one of those things, though. It teaches you all those things that you are going to use in all the future ones, and so that's where I think where it can feel slow or feel like a bit sluggish is that it does throw a lot, especially for those like coming in now where those systems weren't all implemented at the time. Because I do remember there was a time before some of those were in there when I was playing on PS4. And to now where it's like I'm sitting there going, oh my gosh, there's all these little things. And my mindset also was like, I don't need to do all the side quests yet, or I don't need to do, I just need to do these things that will progress the story or progress my job. And then also those different game mechanics to unlock to make sure I will be using those later, especially for end game. It just, there's a lot to introduce, and it's 50 levels of content to keep in mind, but there's just, don't get caught up in like it's like you said, you don't want to get caught up in the slow pace. Like there are things that happen that go, okay, this is why I'm playing this game and this is why it's good. And Final Fantasy together, like going back to the original like games themselves, nowadays most are like 30-40 hours I think people play, but back when you play the old Final Fantasy games, it was 80 hours. Completionists were like 200 hours. So there was a lot of stuff to do in Final Fantasy games that this game is trying to keep that alive in it as well. That it's like, yeah, we're an MMO, but we're also a Final Fantasy game. And that's where I think it's just keep that focus. And for those who don't really attach to Final Fantasy, you're going for MMO, you may have a different feel for that. And I think that's something to keep in mind. As I had a friend who did play with us, this might make you cringe a little bit, but he did skip the entire story stuff. He was like, I don't care about the cutscenes. I want to play the MMO. But he played up through like Heavensward and Stormblood doing that and still found the enjoyment in the trials, in the dungeons. So it is something that you can play that way. But like me personally, is like the story is so good. Don't miss out on that. You may actually enjoy it. But it's adjusted that way to, find what you need in the game as well. So just try to avoid, I always try to help people avoid like, yeah, it may be slow, but there's really good moments. What are you looking for? Maybe I can point you in the right direction, type of thing. And just instead of just like, get to Heavensward, because like I don't tell people don't buy the skip to Heavensward because you're gonna miss out on so much, because the lead into it was just so, to me, is one of the most brilliant moments from the game. As well, which is why A Realm Reborn is so important to the entire game. That's why they struggled even with the revamp on exactly how to make it a bit more streamlined. I played through it a little bit. I'm still having a hard time seeing what they cut out versus what through my experience, aside from some dialogue and things I used to remember. And it's still like there's so much there. It's like they had a hard time kind of cutting things out to try to make it feel a little less time consuming. But that just shows you how important a lot of that story stuff is as you go into it, and why A Realm Reborn is very, very important to the entire game.
I definitely think the big thing for like A Realm Reborn that really changed my perception on MMOs as well was obviously, as I said, I played WoW like a lot of other people who've come to the game. Obviously, I came at an earlier time, but the biggest difference in the way the story was told was in WoW, you were just one of many other people. You were nameless as hell, and every time you got to an important moment, like one of my biggest gripes, like everyone claims how good Wrath of the Lich King is, for example. My biggest gripe was I did, Ice Crown Citadel whilst it was current. I killed the Lich King. Tyrion gets the credit, and I was like, "You what? I killed him."
No,
And then,
you didn't.
and then obviously in FF, it's different. It's you did it. All of this stuff you're doing, you did. It's not someone else coming in claiming the credit in a cutscene afterwards. It's you. You did it, and I think that is great for storytelling because then you attach more to it because it's you doing it all. You're not just some random
It's
nobody.
much more personal, excuse me, than what WoW gives you. Where I think it took, what did they start calling you, the champion of Azeroth? Like, was it during Warlord Draenor? I think was the expansion that you finally got some sort of recognition. Where, like you said, 14 is you're it. There's one thing I want to talk about, but it's later stuff.
Think
So
during Warlords of Draenor, they started calling you Commander because of all the things you've done in the past, but it's
something like that. Yeah.
but in later titles you get a bit more of a title, I guess you could call it. But that's it.
Riot Alpha says it was Commander in Warlords of Draenor and your champion in Legion onwards.
Yeah.
Legion, that's it. Commander in it. Yeah, either way, it was some sort of recognition that is finally like people saw you as like someone higher than not just some other rando running across. But like it's very A Realm Reborn still goes out of the way to show like, no, you are the hero that in this. Yeah, you're among the other characters, and the other characters do things, but you are the hero the entire time, and that's why it starts off the way it does the very beginning with the vision and everything that happens, where you're kind of like, what's going on, and then it leads you into that you are this person going on, and this is why it really focuses on your character.
So, and I will need to be back in a second because something's happened. I need to clean up quickly. But I'm going to go into a conversation about side content now. So we're talking Hildebrand, Crows of Bahamut, Crystal Tower, Trials, and all the side dungeons. I'm going to give the floor to you to begin with, Devin, because I feel like you'll have a lot to say about that. So
I'm going to try to keep it short.
Well, don't do it too
all
short
right,
because I need the time. So
okay. Well, man, where do we start? Guys, Hildebrand and Logix, I don't know if you've gotten to see this yet, because it probably would have just unlocked for you. Well, it would have locked in after 5.0, isn't it?
I've done one of the Hildebrand storylines here.
Okay, so go through all of that, especially it's a different tone of storytelling that is definitely worth doing, and ends off with some really cool, unique in-game bonuses. It is the hardest part I think people will have with it is that one thing you'll notice in side content, they don't have any voice acting. It's all reading. But if you really appreciate the classic Final Fantasy like subtitle like storytelling, that's right there for you. But it's also such a unique experience that I know I actually just recently finished all the way up, because it continues past it continues past the A Realm Reborn sections, and they didn't do one for the most recent expansion, but they said it will come back. And it's just something that Hildebrand is just the fun side of Final Fantasy to experience. And I highly recommend, even if you're like, what is going on? What is this random thing? Is this some weird Japanese type stuff? Yes, but also it's got a lot. The localization team gets a lot of praise in this game for how creative they are when it comes to translating the content from Japanese to over to English and other languages. There's a lot of praise, and Hildebrand is probably one of the best examples of that with how they go about telling that story. Definitely worth it. Not required. Do it at your own pace, but it's very, very fun.
It's one of those things where it's like you should do it. It's if I was laughing my guts out most of the time. It's that's
I
something
mean,
I can attest. It was fantastic. It's like, why
e-
would you not
even,
do it?
even just like me, you, and one of our FC members, Chief, we were like talking about moments in it, and we were talking about moments that Logix hasn't even seen yet, and even just hearing what like sort of happens. We didn't try. We tried to avoid too much spoilers. We just mentioned funny moments, and even then, we were all pissing ourselves. We couldn't contain ourselves, laughing away. And it's like we have one member of RFC who's not done it yet, and he's played the game nearly as long as I have. And it's like, why have you not done this? Why won't you do this?
There's a couple things, and especially if there's some Final Fantasy stuff that it's really funny if you are a fan of Final Fantasy, because there's characters they put in there from a long history of previous games. But even if you're not, there are funny moments, and some of it is cartoony, but it's like slapstick comedy, but like over the top like situations, and just it's really hard to talk about without spoiling it, because it's just something you want to experience. You want people to experience. And I think I saw a very fantastic meme about like when it came to like the writers of Final Fantasy, when they're developing the main storyline, it shows like intellectual science, like calculations and stuff. And then it's like writing the Hildebrand story as like they're sitting there just kind of like chilling, like kind of high out of their mind or something like that.
You know what would be a great idea? Let's have this.
And it's just like it's just these two different worlds that it just really brings a lot more to the game. Your characters involved, you have funny characters also in it that do a lot of silly things, and it's just there are trials and dungeons that are to that quest as well, that are just as much to enjoy, and it's not as like difficult, but you still want to make sure you're paying attention, especially if you're syncing up to the content. Absolutely hilarious. I know plenty of us, we went through it and just ran the different dungeons and trials from that too, and we're just like, this is amazing, especially some of the surprises that come with some of those.
Yeah, it's
I
got a
think-
lot. Sorry,
I think because it's it's so different, and it's its own sort of self-contained thing, separate from the story. Even if you don't care for the story, you should play the Hildebrand storyline, because it's hilarious, and
It really is.
That's a question, Slandy. Have you done Hildebrand yet?
Not fully, but I have started it.
Well, guess what you're doing on stream at some point. Godbert Mandeville is a god, and you will respect him. I don't
Some
know.
of the game animation in that too is just so funny. Like the game animation that they go out of their way to actually put in there is not just simple dialogue boxes and stuff. That there is actually certain animations that will happen at certain moments, and you're like, you kind of go like, will my character be able to be something like that, or can I do expressions like that eventually? Because they went and did these with the Hildebrand characters. It's just amazing.
One of the things actually watching the gameplay of A Realm Reborn back, because obviously I've not played it since A Realm Reborn, so the experience has kind of gone away from me, but I've watched the story still, because when I help Logix out or help other friends of mine go through the story, I usually ask them to share play their screen so I can watch along with them and experience it with them. And watching that last scene, the banquet, the great banquet of infamy, seeing the animations of him escaping, like I remember a lot of the lore, I retain all the lore and that lot, but the actual like smaller details such as the animation, watching that back really made me realize that they've actually had really good animation ever since A Realm Reborn. Like obviously you see it in Hildebrand really well, but sorry, even in the main story, it was like, wow, like really we had this back then? Am I just forgetting all this? Like it was crazy.
that's the final cutscene I was watching yesterday, right? The really long one.
Yes, where it goes, you may need to set aside some time to watch all this, which I think is great, because I don't feel like World of Warcraft, if you played that, would warn you about stuff like that. It would just be like, oh yeah, by the way, bit late now.
Yeah, I was a bit
Not
taken
even-
back by their attention to detail as well. Like when Raban gets really angry, and you can see his jaw like chattering. He's that pissed, you know. Like they really went all out with the animation.
Sorry, what was you gonna say, Devin?
I say it's beautiful.
Yeah. So we've touched on Hildebrand. Did we touch on any of the other sites?
We kind of went really strong in Hildebrand.
Yeah,
It's understandable.
So I want to talk about the next one, Core of Bahamut, which I think, yet again, Slandy, have you finished?
No.
We need to get you through some of this stuff. Logix has done it. We can barely ever get him on the game, but when he does come on the game, he gets it all done. So Core of Bahamut, obviously, is... I think what's cool about Core of Bahamut, because I'm a 1.0 player, is it's a big kind of fan song for people who played 1.0. It kind of gives them the clarity of what happened to their world, because obviously we all moved over to 2.0, and you didn't. Obviously, as we said, the Flames of Truth trailer shows you a lot of what actually happened, but not even just that. A lot of the lore that you experience within the story of Core of Bahamut explains a lot of what actually did happen and why the realm is the way it is and all things like that. And as a raid, it is still to this day holds up. Like if you run that minimum item level and with Echo off, like I know Asmongold has, it is still a tough raid to this day. It holds up. Nail Van Darnus, even German Stormblood, people would full party unsync Nail Van Darnus, which is turn 9, and it would still wipe groups. Even that when they were all a full 8-man group doing it at level 70, still was wiping to a level 50 piece of content, which was, especially as a former WoW player, was crazy to me. I was like, what you could, if we went back and did Molten Core at level 70 with full TBC raid gear, we'd steamroll it. It wouldn't stand a chance. But this was holding up, and that's something that I really like about the content in FF, particularly around Reborn stuff, is it has held up well. One of the things that they've done at level 80 is the Unreal Trials, which is the level 50 extreme trials, but with all your level 80 ability sets. But it's the exact same fight. They've not changed out. They've left it all the same. And it's amazing how many people it still fucks up to this day. Like, when people went back to vanilla, classic WoW, a lot of them cleared these raids like crazy because they're like, well, we have the knowledge and we've learned, how best to stat and stuff. Now we can just go back and kick its ass. It's not the same with FF because of how it's mechanically built. It's still a matter of you can know all you like, but executing that knowledge still will kick your ass.
It's funny because I think I had someone who played they're a big WoW player and they watched this. It was like, wow, it telegraphs all these abilities or all these things. That's got to be super easy. And it's like, yeah, but you sit there and think that, like, you have the sprint ability, which you get at the beginning of your game, and I don't even think that ability was in the original. But that is an ability you will use, and if you get caught in a mechanic, it is very, very unforgiving. And even then, if you maybe you make a mistake, but then you get the vulnerability debuff, and then that stacks. And then if you make enough mistakes, and that's really going to hinder you. It's not like something else like. You don't really get that. At least I didn't do current WoW rating. I used to do back at Wrath and Lich King, but I just feel like it's a lot more unforgiving when you did those. And that's one of the things I think is super fun, that even though maybe it telegraphs all these abilities, it's like, yeah, but you still got to know where to put it, what need to be doing. DPS has so much that they you got to make sure you're still doing your damages, that you're doing your rotations to where your global cooldown versus your off global cooldown abilities, you're cycling through those very well. Poor black mages, and just I think that's just one of the things that, even like going back to playing Coils and some of the older stuff, that you can sit there and be like, I remember just going in blind the first time, even with Crystal Tower, where that was something was not required at the time, where a friend was like, oh, I really want to see this new character and everything that's in that, and that's why we went and played it. And then there was things that I was suffering in that in that raid group, where it was like there was these different mechanics I didn't know. I was like, what am I doing? It's kind of like doing those raids all over again. And even now I kind of fall to some of them, even though I've ran it quite a few times, because it's just that one or two times I'm like, oh man, I was too busy. I'm on the different job of casting, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to be moving and doing something else during this, and just end up dying, be like, okay, someone res me please.
So, because Slandy doesn't have too much to say about coils, and I think we've talked about the mechanical and stuff, let's move on to Crystal Tower, because I know all four of us have done that. Obviously, yeah, a big thing obviously is now it's actually tied to the story. Logic doesn't know why yet because he hasn't got the Shadowbringers.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, don't worry about it. But keeping on coils and Crystal Tower quickly, one of the things I really FF does raids is obviously in World of Warcraft. I know a lot of we're comparing, but everyone does. Let's be honest. In World of Warcraft, the raids are part of the narrative of the main story, but most of the people who do the raids are the raiders who don't really care about the story. But then you need to do the raid to understand the story, but you also need another book and all the rest. It's just weird to me that the raids are part of the story. Whereas whilst for the overall world, the raids in FF are part of the story, they tell their own independent story that doesn't affect the main world too much, with exception of Crystal Tower. But even then, it's more like a sub-knowledge kind of thing, more than it is, actually affects everything. So that's one of the things I really like about the Raid series is that they're utilizing it to tell more stories that they couldn't otherwise tell in the main story. Just a lot of nodders right now.
I'm trying to sit here and think about like all the raids because like there's so many like I love the fact that everything, just keep in mind everything, even the raids are canon in this world. Even the most recent one I've been told, which kind of blows my mind, and I don't know if I can say what that is yet because not everyone's played it. So, but like it's good to know that, and they're very in-depth stories. They make a lot of sense to go through. Like especially if you like, yeah, maybe you complete the main story of an area, but like going in through like just I remember taking breaks and playing some of these. Although I did miss the Heavensward one. I was still learning a lot at that point. But just going back and just like seeing the stories that were invested in that was like, oh wow. And then it kind of really painted the picture of the world again and what I'm playing in. And then it felt like almost like its own if like kind of like its own arc or own like series by itself that was kind of like inside this major story I'm playing. To where, and then as you see, those who play Shadowbringers can see, Crystal Tower does play a big part in the story later on. That's something that they will use into the game if they need to. And it's just, I think it just makes it even more. So it gives you still a sense of purpose to do what can be considered side content. But like it still has an enriched, in-depth story. Crystal Tower, especially, was very interesting, and a lot of callbacks to older Final Fantasy stuff in that too. Big Final Fantasy fans, a lot of callbacks. There's things I recognize from I don't know if I can say which ones, but like just those older NES games that you
Final
would,
Fantasy
if you didn't
3.
know. Yeah.
Crystal Tower is right out of Final Fantasy 3. And that's one thing that I feel they did well, is that they implemented Final Fantasy 3 lore into Final Fantasy 14. And it's not like the two games are connected, it's that it's its own existence within the world of 14. But I thought it's really nice. That's one of the things that I think Final Fantasy does well as well, with all of its stories, not just Crystal Tower or the main stories, stuff like that. All these references from other Final Fantasy games for people like me who's played every Final Fantasy game, and I can go, oh yeah, I know that. But then people who actually haven't played it, it doesn't matter. You can still fully enjoy the story despite it. Because like Logic hasn't played Final Fantasy 3, have you, Logic?
No.
But like you could still experience the Crystal Tower story and experience it for what it was and sort of make sense of it. And obviously Crystal Tower is badass because Nero comes back. Although I don't know how Slandy feels about that, because Slandy just hates every single villain in this game and no one is actually decent. So what was your experience? When did you do Crystal Tower, Slandy? Because obviously it's a requirement now, but I don't know when you actually did it.
I did it when it was a requirement as well, but I have also did it in the past when it wasn't.
A fun fact about Crystal Tower for all you new players is that the whole quest line where you have to go and collect the I think it's like sand or some stuff to open the gate to Labyrinth of the Ancients. Nowadays in the quest, you go along and do it. In the quest, you do a little fight and then you get given the thingy. Back in my day, you couldn't do that. You had the quest to go get the sand, and you had to get them from a fate, and this fate only spawned like once every hour, and it would get melted within seconds because so many people were doing it, and then you were just stuck there for an hour, like I just do fuck all. Because obviously, if you went to another area, by the time you remembered when it was back on and got back to the area and loaded in, it had been killed again. So you had to just wait there for an hour. It was an awful system. Like, one thing that A Realm Reborn has done really well is because of all the new systems and it's aged really well. In that, the longer it's gone on, these systems have actually helped make it better, not worse. But doing around, if people nowadays, especially with the attention span a lot of them have, and this whole get to Heavensward thing, had to do a lot of the stuff that we had to do back in A Realm Reborn, they'd have quit the game. It was not, like, mechanically, it was not well thought out. And I will say that as someone who has had much respect for A Realm Reborn. One of the reasons I actually want to do this podcast is because I think it gets a bad rep. Now, I don't think Slandy or Logix has done many of them, but I think you've done probably a few, Slandy, because I think me and you've talked about it before. But one of the things I like about Final Fantasy 14 is the side dungeons, the hard mode dungeons as they're known as. One of the things I've really always enjoyed about these is it's set in the same place. It's a harder version of it, obviously, because it's usually powered up level wise and stuff like that. But unlike WoW, which is like, here's a hard mode, have a ton of modifiers, this one is, here's a hard mode, have a new story, have a new layout to the map, have new bosses, and I think that was so cool. Because it means that you can, like, Satasha Hard, for instance. Everyone hates Satasha. We've all done it a billion times because of leveling roulette. But you can do Satasha. I know a lot of people who've done Satasha, they're now at 80 and they still haven't done Satasha Hard yet. It's like when they do that, they won't be just like, oh, here's Satasha again, because it's a completely different layout, whole new story, whole new bosses, different mechanics, different mob layouts. And I think that's really cool about side dungeons, is that they continue the narrative, they continue evolving this world, and that's what all the content is built for. Even so far back as A Realm Reborn, it's always been about evolving this world with time. Nodders.
Yes. So, the only dungeon I really can remember that did something similar to that in World of Warcraft was actually Dead Mines, with the Vanessa Van Cleef story, when they did the whole world revamp with Cataclysm. I think they did a little bit with some other dungeons as well as Scarlet Monastery, but not like too much.
Yeah.
So
I remember the changes they made, and
Yeah.
it's like if they had done that more on WoW, it would have been a lot more interesting.
yeah,
That's most of the side content I can really think about around me. But Gold Saucer, obviously. How does everyone feel
Yes.
about Gold Saucer? One of the best pieces
Dude.
of side content.
Do Gold Saucer. It is definitely fun. I mean, even Asmongold, like I don't think he even if for those who don't know, Gold Saucer is from Final Fantasy VII. So anyone who's played Final Fantasy will instantly hear Gold Saucer and go, "What? That's in this game?" And it's this whole other thing. But even watching Asmongold play it, I think he was like, "I love the Gold Saucer." I don't even think he even knows anything about the Gold Saucer. I don't remember. And just seeing the joy of doing the little games, getting there's a whole different currency for that whole area. There are definitely really good rewards and like gear, mounts, minions, furniture, all sorts of stuff to get from there, and just grinding out. There's the different gates. There's so much. I think they said they're adding more to it, aren't they? With the 6.0.
They've said they've got one big thing that's coming, and I swear to God, it best be Blitzball.
I really hope it's Blitzball. Everyone wants Blitzball in the Gold Saucer, and Gold Saucer is already busy as it is right now with the Make It Rain campaign going on. Put Blitzball in there, it's going to have login queues just get into Gold Saucer.
There's so much like little bits of side content as well, and it's like Logix, for instance, one of the things that we really got him into the game with. There's two things that really got Logix to like be invested in the game, and it was ocean fishing and Gold Saucer.
Ocean fishing. I need to start doing that. I haven't done it yet. I hear it's fun.
We are going to take a short break before we continue, just because Logic needs a quick break. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in maybe 5 to 10 minutes. So everyone else who's watching, please grab a drink or do what you need to do. Have a loo, get a coffee, and we'll be back soon. Welcome back, and sorry for that short intermission. So before we went off, we were still talking about God Saucer, and I wanted to finish a little there. One of the things that I really like about God Saucer, and it's something you can access from level 15, so I'd say it's a Realm Reborn content. I can't remember when every single piece of content came into it, but you have jumping puzzles, you have figure out where the bamboo's getting sliced and move out the way of it.
Can't beat that one still. I
God.
can't beat that one still.
It's ridiculously hard. Yeah, I've not completed it once. And then you've got other games that you can go and do. You've got your mini cat pot. You've got your triple triad, which is really good. Funny fact, Logix was doing triple triad, and I could not get him to do it right. I was watching him, and he was like, "What are you on about?" And now he's going off and just collecting cards on his own. Like, yeah, this is quite fun.
Dude, the triple triad, I've actually now invested more in because of that new mount they added for getting all the cards. So I'm like, crumb, now I got to grind this. But it's also from one of my favorite games, so I can't really complain.
And you were saying Logix?
Yeah, I just had to play it for myself to kind of figure out the mechanics, and then as soon as I got them figured out, I was off.
I actually think that's a big thing about Final Fantasy 14, and obviously Realm Reborn is the teaching area, but it's someone can come in and tell you how to play the game and explain it to you, but until you really go out your way and figure it out yourself, you're screwed, because that is the easiest way to learn it. And I think that if anyone's here is thinking of joining the game, that is my biggest advice to you, is ask for help if you're unsure, but also you won't learn unless you learn it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same with like dungeons and things like that as well. Like any boss that has mechanics, you can explain it to me and it'll just go in one ear and out the other until I've actually done the fight a few times, maybe wiped a couple of times, you know. That's what it takes for me to figure it out. And that's what puts me off about those, is like you need to have a team of people who are willing to put up with you failing a couple of times so that you can get it.
But that's the thing about most Final Fantasy people, is they're actually quite willing to let you die. I have a slightly jaded opinion of the FF community because of how long I've been around and stuff like that. But generally, overall, I agree with the sentiment that the community is actually really good. Like, I was like in raiding, I was always really stressed out on WoW if I wasn't doing enough damage, if I wasn't doing mechanics right, all of this stuff. And even though I was a good enough raider, I cleared bloody Nax 40 back in the day, but it still stressed me out. Whereas on FF, for some reason, I just don't feel that stress. If we wipe, I actually have a laugh about my mistakes a lot of the time, and I make some mistakes in Savage. If I ever do a stream of my raiding, you will see I actually mess up a fair bit. A lot of the fault is mine, but it's just there's a less stressful environment. But I definitely agree with Logix. Like if you're playing with a group of friends, that helps a lot. And I generally try to keep a group of friends who's all interested in playing it.
It does help, especially with less stress, because like you said, most of the community, and even that's one thing that kept me going too, is playing through those early dungeons. Like, what was that one? I keep forgetting the name, but I play it all the time. It's the one you're in the mansion, and I didn't know that you could return to go back to the beginning. In that dungeon,
yeah.
And I was like, how do I get back there? And people were like, just do this. I was like, what am I doing? But they all waited for me. I was like, sorry, I was confused, I didn't know what to do, and I'm thanks for waiting. They were like, you're good, we of course would wait for you, we want to make sure you did. And they waited until we did that final boss for me to figure out what was going on. But there's been tons of encounters like that, where it's like, hey guys, I don't know what's going on or what to do, and they're like, yeah, cool, let's walk you through it, or let's wait until you get what you need to do. So I think I've only had 2 times where I've had some people that not quite like WoW level toxicity, but a little bit, they were kind of like little frustrated. But that's like in the entirety of the 2 years I've been playing, I've encountered people that haven't been they haven't been willing to kind of be patient with you on that. Vote to kick on something aside from like disconnecting for 10 minutes or more doesn't really pop up for someone being too slow or not doing enough DPS or not knowing how the dungeon works. So that's one of the things that really has, like, the community is really, and the developers are very invested in the community, making sure they have that kind of integrity as well. That really helps.
And speaking of the community, one of the big things obviously recently is that FF is blowing up. In some cases, it feels quite literally when you can't get on your server because they've gone down because too many people are joining. But like and obviously it's big streamers are doing it. They've got way better at advertising because I remember there were adverts on TV for Heaven's Ward, but you saw them once in a blue moon, and it was rare on what channels they appeared. So they've actually had an advertising presence for years, but it wasn't until Shadowbringers that you actually really started seeing on TV, like, get Shadowbringers. And even on the PlayStation Store, you'd get the pre-orders obviously for Shadowbringers and Stormblood and stuff like that, but it's only now Endwalker's out, but you see it on like the front page of pre-orders. So they're getting a lot better at advertising. So yes, there is this all these streamers coming in from here, there, and everywhere playing Fantasy 14, but like everything is just such in their ball court right now that and obviously there's pros and cons to this because obviously the servers are being stressed to hell. Creating a character is being stressed. There was a point for all of the European servers on both Chaos and Light where you couldn't create a character on any server.
Oh my gosh.
Whatsoever. All of them were down. It was ridiculous. And then you have like 500 people in the queue just to log on. And like, this is stuff we expect at a expansion. Yeah, you don't expect it like the 4 months before the expansions even do. Like, it is crazy. And obviously, as a fan, I am happy that the game is blowing up. Like, and there's not even any negative to that. Yes, the servers are being stressed, but I can wait in a queue for 10 minutes. I'll pop a YouTube video on my laptop and just wait. But like, what is everyone else's opinion on the amount of people and the amount of new players coming in? Like, how do you experience that? Obviously, Logix himself is a new person, so what's your opinion on it, Logix, being a new person yourself?
Well, it sounds like the game's doing great. Obviously, when I was in a call with Pheasant the other day. You weren't here, but I was like, I want to go on Final Fantasy for a bit, and I got told I couldn't because they were doing a patch, to allow people to even be able to log in. I'm like, well, there goes that afternoon idea then. So yeah, it does seem like they're doing really well. And like you said, if it's just before a DLC or a patch or anything comes out, just randomly a bunch of people are joining, that's obviously going to help the game quite well, help the company as well.
Oh yeah. And what about you, Sandy? What's your opinion on it all? Because I noticed you've got a few of your friends sort of into it a little now.
Yes, I think it's great. It's good for the company. It's good for the community. It's getting bigger, and the only downside is the instability about the servers. Honestly, I mean, more players is always a good thing in video games, especially MMOs. So yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to say thank you for the follow to Wagga Dogger, apparently. So thank you for that, Wagga. I was going to type it in chat, but there's your thanks here. Devin, what is your opinion on all the new people?
Obviously, super excited that there's such a big surge of people coming to play the game. Comparing to WoW again, I remember sitting in 1,000, 2,000 people queues, during some times of the day. That when it comes to these long queues for Final Fantasy 14, it's not too bad. And even then, like, I think I saw one of the first times that when it started kind of coming up from Shadowbringers, the amount of people that I started getting queues for like 25, 30 minutes or 30 people. And then wait a couple minutes and then it'd go right in, to where now we're seeing 500 and stuff like that. So in the at where for me, like the queue times don't bother me because I used to sit through longer during the heyday of WoW back in Burning Crusade and all that. When people were starting to log in, and it was like I was on a full server, so it was like 1,000 people before you get on. It's like 30 minutes to wait. So I have that context. At the same time, for those who've been playing 14 for a long time, they haven't had that long wait time. So I was just remember like when Asmongold got on and created this first character, I was like, so sorry to all the people. Where did he go to? Cactuar. I think it was, well, first it was supposed to be, I think, Gilgamesh, and then he went to Cactuar. And I was like, I'm so sorry to all the people that, because his followers and viewers were all logging at the same time, whether it was trial or people who were already at the game. And it was like, some people were like, I can't even log in. They had to use the world travel or the login where you log into a different world with your character, and they were like, what's going on?
And even then, even locations were locked. Like Asmon himself couldn't get between Limsa.
He couldn't go back to Limsa,
go to the lower decks. It was that bad. Crazy.
So it's interesting, and although that's annoying, it's still really cool to see that, because it's like, okay, yeah, now we're seeing the big surge come in. As those things happen, it will trickle out and start to kind of even out. The developers are clearly what was with the with all these changes with the recent patches were stuff they were like, we didn't expect to do this till Endwalker. We had to do it now. And just, they're definitely on top of it, seeing we see in, in the US, in, Europe, and now we have the Australian ones, Oceania servers coming up. Eventually they're kind of having to start moving that or doing some different things with that because of these increase of people, which is really cool, because it's like, okay, we'll see more people on, there's more capacity, which is going to make the world feel a lot more full. At the same time, you're going to have that other side of like having the way log on, free trial people don't get preference over sub-paying people, which makes sense, but still kind of stinks trying to get someone to get into the game with the free trial. Those things that are just going to have to work through and just kind of be patient with, as the game is definitely well worth the time. But overall, it's super exciting. I can't wait to see, hopefully we'll get to see some, I know they have some world first races when they come out with the new trials and stuff that have been very interesting to watch. They're just not as big as WoW, but I'm kind of hoping to see that we'll see some more activity, or some people doing those kind of like as we see more play the game.
Well, it's definitely interesting seeing the different types of people coming as well, because obviously a lot of people are just like, oh, it's all the WoW refugees. It really isn't. We got someone apply for my free company. It was either yesterday or the day before. I think it was the day before, and he came in and he didn't even know how to use /tel or /fc or like that to speak to people, because he'd applied, and I sent him a tel and I was like, you've applied, what is it you're looking for in a free company, blah blah blah, and I got no reply, and it was like, oh, okay. So eventually, after a couple of hours, because I saw he'd been online the whole time, I was like, there's no way he's busy for this long. So I searched up his name in the search info thingy, found out what area he was in, mounted up, and just flew around looking for him. And I went and found him and was like, oh, you've applied. And he answered me. I was like, oh, yes, sorry, didn't know how to do this and that lot. And so I helped first teach him to do all this stuff. And then I was like, yeah, come on, join the free company then. I'm happy to, help you out and introduce you to the game and that lot. And it was just crazy to me. Like, just get, people who aren't even into MMOs are coming in and taking an interest in it. Like, it's not like, so all the people who think it's just World of Warcraft people coming, it isn't. They're coming from all over. It's ridiculous. This is FF14's time, and it is, I don't think it's going to slow down yet. Like, a big worry, obviously, for a lot of people, we're moving off A Realm Reborn a little here, but a big worry for people is obviously Endwalker is not going to live up to Shadowbringers, and we've seen consistently they can step up to the plate, so I have no worries. And I think
it's definitely a concern, because I think of like after Lich King, right? Lich King for me, it was the culmination of Arthas and the Lich King from Warcraft 3, and then after that, it kind of like, I kind of fell off that. But I agree. At the same time, it's like, look, they've constantly built up height. Although some people kind of pick on Stormblood a little bit, that is not as good as Heaven's Word. It's like, I think it had to start without spoiling too much. It had to kind of start telling a new story in a way. Whereas Heaven's Word, we jump right into it. You go right at the end of 2.55, going into 3.0. It's like you go in there, it's all set up, you're good, and that's why I think really helps that. And I think what they did with Stormblood is what they've done with the current content to hopefully get us kind of hyped with Endwalker. And I think I'm still concerned. I'm up here with Shadowbringers, and that it's got so much to live up to that I'm like I'm trying not to out psych myself. But it is like you said, also trusting these developers, trusting the writers and everything, that they've done nothing but been really good. And then now you have Soken, who's just brilliant at the music. I want to say Answers we heard earlier was Nobuo Uematsu, the longtime composer of all Final Fantasy. But with like someone like Soken, and I think they had some others that were starting to get involved. I just know Soken gets most of the credit, which is fine because he's awesome. Just seeing what he's been able to do, almost like a Nobuo Uematsu 2.0 in a ways. I think because if from A Realm Reborn, and you're going to see it throughout, the music is so much part of the story and so much part of the game that it's something that also I think that really helped in a lot of other content. I'm trying not to spoil it. I'm just to make sure I don't say too much. That, like you said, I'm not super worried, but there's part of me that's like, I know how I can get. I'm like, just try not to overhype myself for it. So that's my only concern with that.
So before we wrap up, I want to ask all three of you: is there any questions or any of you have for each other or about the game in general?
I don't think so.
Slandy?
Not really, but talking about old stuff from the game, which they actually removed in future, is that when you actually leveled up your job class at the start in the early game, actually, I remember that when you get to level 30, you get your job like from Gladiator to Paladin, and I do actually remember that you actually had to live a secondary job as well.
Yeah.
That small person thing they removed there, it annoys me a bit, but I also like it for the new players who comes into the game and wants to continue with the story and doesn't have like a lot of time to actually level up a second class to like continue. But I feel that there was a small joy they like took away from that point, because it felt like you were what I can't say that word at the moment. Working up towards your job main class, and I feel like that they took that part a bit away from it, and I kind of feel like that's a sad part, because I like to develop my class that way. It was a lot different from other games, so.
Well, whilst we're on that, one of the big changes that they've made is back in the old days, if you wanted to raid, for instance, you really had to level every job. Like, it wasn't an option thing; you had to, because now we have the role abilities, which obviously Logic's I help you with your hotbars. You know, when we do the normal abilities, and then we have the role abilities. You didn't have that back then. What you did was you got half of these abilities by leveling up one job, and then you'd get all of its, well, not all of it, but most of its abilities that could be cross-class. And then when you leveled up another class, you got to pick a certain amount of the different cross-class abilities from all these different jobs to build your class properly. Like, if you were a warrior, for instance, you had to level paladin. There was no choice about it. You needed rampart, you needed flash, you needed provoke, all this stuff that only paladin had that warrior didn't.
Yeah.
So all these different jobs, you had to level them just to raid, and so there was a lot more time investment. So that's actually one thing that a lot of people praise, is that FF is more friendly to its users' times, and that has actually changed a lot over the years because it wasn't as nice back in A Realm Reborn. And another big change, actually, you was talking earlier on, Devin, about sprinting in content to dodge mechanics. back in the old days, you had not only just your HP and MP like you do now, you have the TP bar, and the
I remember the
TP,
TP.
the TP bar, you used like your physical abilities with TP, and your normal rotation didn't really take from it. But if you wanted to AOE, you would run out of TP really quick. And then the big one was sprint. If you use that in combat, it ate your TP bar, and then you couldn't attack. So it's a lot more friendly now than it used to be. It really could be a dick back then.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really think I have much more to say about A Realm Reborn. Devin, have you?
I think we covered a lot of what we would probably, I think most people would see. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. Just like except things that used to be versus how they are now. It
Yeah.
is much easier. Like you said, the class. I think like for Paladin, you needed to get Gladiator to 30 and White Mage to like 10 or 15 in order to get Gladiator, stuff like that. So it's a lot more like all you gotta do is reach level 10, and then you can go pick any other job and level that. Well, in the Realm Reborn, before you get up to the higher ones, which have different level requirements and making sure you have the later games. But like the original classes, it gives you that flexibility, and you don't if you don't want to have to level White Mage or excuse me, Conjurer. At the time, if you don't want to level a Conjurer, you don't have to. You can just go and
Yeah.
enjoy that, or you can just go full on tank. I got Paladin, Warrior, and then later down the road, Dark Knight. So and that's all you want to do. And then after that, Gunbreaker. So if that's all you want to do, you can. And Realm Reborn is just I don't know. I think people just as long as you're going with the perspective, like we talked about earlier, not just get the Heaven's Word. It's that same thing of like in WoW, it's like I got to get the in game so I can play with all my friends.
Well,
You
the
don't
thing
have
is,
to.
obviously, in WoW, it kind of is more over content is at the end game. In FF,
Yeah.
it's the journey that matters. Yoshi has said himself, like, stop rushing. Obviously, he's also like, if you want to skip, just skip. But Yoshi is a polite human being.
Mm.
But the point of this game is the journey to the end, and there is end game content. But take it from me, who's trying to freaking 100% the game. You will regret when you've run out of content. Like, don't rush it. Take your time, enjoy it all. Because I'm at a point now where I get my enjoyment from going around to new players or my friends who haven't done stuff like that. And I'm like, do you want help with this? Do you want to? Can I watch you do this? Because I'm running out of content to do. I have Ultimate. I'm finishing my Shadowbringers quests, obviously on stream. I got to collect triple. I've got a few smaller things like collect triple triad, go finish Battle Destiny's Arsenal, stuff like that. But overall, I have done most of the content, and like I've done it.
Yeah.
And it's really friendly for new players because, like, if you have someone that has played the game, like as far as you have, or as far as some of us have, it's easy with level sync. The most beautiful part that I love about the dungeon system, trials, and all that, is you can sync on with the party and have an authentic dungeon experience. While this is their first time. Yeah, I've ran it maybe a little bit easier than what it used to be when it first came out. Or a lot in some cases, but it's still cool that you could be like, yeah, I'll just hop on this character. I've been leveling this character. I'll hop on. I ran that dungeon before, but I know you're going through the story and go and help them. Or, hey, I need a healer or a tank so you can make queue times faster for DPS people. That's one thing I love about the whole game, and it's very friendly to play on your own and to play with friends. And then really easy to help people out without feeling like in WoW going into help someone on an older dungeon. I think they implemented. I don't know if they implemented it. I haven't really got to play it, but they were talking about implementing something where you can kind of like do this sync party system, so you can go help your friends. You go in with your top level character, but then you would kind of be at the same level as that person. But before people just run through and just kill all the things for you and kind of run for you, where Final Fantasy allows you to, especially with Realm Reborn, with all the dungeons and trials and things to do up through those 50 levels. It's really easy for someone that, yeah, I know I'm in Shadowbringers, but I can come and run tank for you or run healer for you to so that way you can still experience the story. You don't have to feel like you have to wait on or feel like you have to skip cutscenes that because other people are waiting. That's just one of the friendly parts of Realm Reborn. Enjoy that. It is going to pay off in the long run. Yes, Heaven's Word is something worth getting to, but I really will lean on to the fact that if I played just Heavensward without A Realm Reborn, my appreciation for this entire game would not be as big as it is now. It is so crucial that I tell people play it, enjoy it, and like you said, and like Yoshi P says, take your time, enjoy the journey. And if you want to break off and do A Realm Reborn relic weapons, do it. Like go do those. You know, and you don't have to feel like you have to get to the end so fast, because there's so much to experience from that time. Just like Asmongold's doing.
And
Yes,
to add on,
Andy.
and to add on to that a little bit as well, obviously
Yes.
I've just finished A Realm Reborn. It does pay off to actually listen to and pay attention to the story, because you get like they will reference back to things that have previously happened that you've done, and obviously the final cutscene all starts to make a lot of sense. And if you've just been skipping through the story, then you're just gonna be like, "What's going on?" It's
Yes,
it pays off. It pays off pretty. It pays off pretty well.
Another
I think
thing
it was oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say another thing to note is that also some of the stuff that you do that you might just think is like side content or ain't gonna matter, it can change the experience you have with the MSQ. Obviously, it happens more into Heaven's Ward, but just at the end, me before Logic's finished Around Reborn, I'd said to him, "Go level Dragoon. You will not regret it in the cutscenes later if you've gone and done it." And so he did. And obviously, Astinian then references, "Oh, I know you from that job quest line," and I think that's so cool. That's one of the reasons why I'm trying to do all the side quests in the game, because that way, if anyone appears and goes, "Oh, I know you," I can be like, "I know you."
I think it was because I mained Summoner. I did not expect to stick with Summoner once I got to the later jobs, and I've so far enjoyed Summoner. And one of the job quests in there, you get to work with Y'shtola's sister, and that is something that comes out later, that she recognizes you from that. And I was like, that's so cool that all that time I did in Realm Reborn with her is still acknowledged with my character. So
Yeah, everything you do at some point will pay off, whether you think it's in that quest line or later down the line. Everything in this game pays off eventually. It's great.
and beware if you story skip. I saw this the other day, where someone story skipped and then they go, I think it was a line, no spoilers here, it's just a line Alphino said is like, all we did came down to this, is the line they got, and they were like, what did we do? And it was like, they were like, this is why you don't buy a story skip, is what they were saying, is like, I wish I didn't buy the story skip. And it was one of those things that, no context around that at all. Just kind of like saying, hey, that's why you should definitely just take your time, enjoy it. Enjoy if you just want to see the Lancer Dragoon storyline, which I hear is pretty cool, or one of the best ones. Dark Knight is really, really cool storyline. I hear is one of the best out of the job storylines. Go in and experience that, and I think that plays a lot into. You'll see that start really interweaving very well into all of the story in the entirety of the game.
Yeah.
And
I think my biggest problem was when I started Final Fantasy 14 in the past. I haven't played any of the Final Fantasy games, and I was just thinking this is just another MMO I had to get to the end game. And the more I played it, I learned that it like everyone has been saying on the stream, it's a journey. You have to take your time, and I can feel that. And I wished I had someone to tell me when I started the game that it was like that. It is just as much a single player experience as it is an MMO experience, because there is so much story going on compared to other MMOs I have played and tried. So
obviously, for people who do want to skip, if you're not interested in the story, if you do just want to get to the end game content, you can do that. Like, none of us are saying don't enjoy the game how you want to enjoy it. By statistics wise, a lot of people who do boost through it just end up falling off a game because it quickly loses. If you skip to the end, you've missed out everything. But for those of you who are like enjoy the story and you're like, well, I've heard it's better in Heaven's Ward, I've heard it's better in Shadowbringers. Even if you think it's you have to endure it, play through A Realm Reborn. Because if you love the story, you skipping it won't help you because you do miss out on a lot, especially with A Realm Reborn. Like there is stuff that's from A Realm Reborn, we're still waiting to pay off in Endwalker. Like, there's that much depth to the stuff we get given in A Realm Reborn that we have to wait for.
I do remember one from my chat actually said, "This is pretty deep for a deep lore for an MMO game," and it is.
I think it was Jesse Cox that I was watching one of his streams because he played like really heavily 14 before everything kind of went off, and he was kind of writing about the difference between WoW and 14, and he brought up about asking the WoW devs like, "What's this snake tail in this one dungeon?" And they didn't really know. Developer couldn't really say, and he goes, "WoW is the one that will kind of put things in there, and it wouldn't have anything. But 14 would be the game that you're going to see that snake tail pop up later in some way, like they're going to use that as a story." And
they remember.
it's just kind of like that. Yeah, they do, and they will use those contents as Logix will probably get to see now going further past the Realm Reborn, where that all culminated and how it's going to really pay off. It's one of those things why seasons ones of a show sometimes may feel like, oh, okay, it was cool, and then you see season 2 and 3 and 4. It's because of that first one. Yeah, it wasn't as exciting or as in depth as the later ones, but it's without that you wouldn't have what you have today. And Realm Reborn is the foundation of the entire game that is there, and that's why even with the revamp, even with all the things that they changed, that they were like, we really couldn't change a whole lot, honestly, but we did try to streamline it because they were having trouble with certain quests. They were like, we try to make some side quests, but then it was like, but then there's this character you meet down the road that wouldn't make sense because now they're in a side quest now and they're not in the main story, and they ran into that a lot. Even to that little detail, I couldn't remember which ones they were talking about because they weren't like big characters, but it was something that they were like, we care about the story, that we're like, we want it to make sense. It's Final Fantasy. It's a role-playing game, that your character's in depth in, and they go down to the very detail, to where anyone, like you said, anyone who skips, they do fall off because you don't get that investment with those characters that you will fall in love with. So just saying. And those characters love your character too, by the way.
This has very much been a pros video of A Realm Reborn. So I'm going to give you one little con, but a promise to all people who are going through it. The voice acting gets better in Heavensward. A Realm Reborn voice acting sucks.
There's only 2. Well, okay, mainly one. One voice actor, I would say, one voice acting character does not get better, in my opinion. Huh?
Is it Merylwyn?
Well, okay, she's the second one. Yeah, she I like her more Jane Lynch sounding character in The Realm Reborn than what she's kind of done now, and they kind of try to replicate that. But Alphino I actually thought was better in The Realm Reborn than I did. And now he's good now. It's the same actor, I think, the whole time, but he's good now. But when it came from Realm Reborn to Heavensward, that Alphino switch, I was like, I kind of liked it a little more. Everyone else was better. So
I think with Alphino now he's much better in Shadowbringers. But I think the thing is, obviously, because Alphino is the one character that you take from Realm Reborn that you have right at the beginning of Heavensward. He's the only one that goes from the end of Realm Reborn with that bad voice acting to Heavensward, because it's so instant. Because like Logix did it like last night. We did one Heavensward quest, and it was just that instant voice change. Like, it's so jarring because you notice it instantly. But I think that's probably why you have that experience with it.
Maybe it's just, I think his was the only one I was like, I kind of like the other one more because I felt like it. Maybe it's because Alphino really grew on me. The whole, the Crystal Brave story stuff and that whole thing that he goes through. I think that's just where it was that kind of changed. But like now, don't get me wrong. Now it's great. There's definitely a lot more time and budget for their voice acting than what they had before. And then there's a whole lot more instances with voice acting where before it was really key story moments that really got that attention. And then the lower budget, they didn't have as much time as they could probably with the studio that they do now to kind of refine those voice acting moments from that game. But I think Alphino was the only one I was like, oh, everyone else was just like, all right, especially Urianger. Urianger was probably the biggest improvement.
I mean, there's not much improvement with Urianger because Urianger can get lost, but yeah. before we do end on the conversation, is there any questions from anyone who's watching? Because I am keeping an eye on the Twitch chat. Is there any questions or anything you guys want saying about A Realm Reborn? We'll give you a minute. But yeah, like the voice acting, I can't believe you don't like Alpha now. One of the big ones for me is
It was
Alizé's.
at first.
Alizé's voice actor is better in Heaven's Ward onwards. Her A Realm Reborn voice, oh my god.
Alizé, like, because I didn't hear her Realm Reborn voice, because you don't hear hers until the Coils, right?
No, there's a few quests in the main
Was it?
MSQ.
Oh,
but it's
that's right.
nothing
There was
big.
when. Okay.
And she has that really squeaky voice.
Yeah, the voice actress who she's had, onward from Heaven's Word is absolutely talented, and I hope she never leaves. I hope she never leaves.
Raya Alva asked, despite all the it is worth it or not, does everyone agree that the final cutscene makes it worth sticking out all of A Realm Reborn?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hands down. It was the transition from A Realm Reborn to Heaven's Word really was like, I feel it now. Like all of that, it's starting. It's like, because you in life, you go forward. There's some things you don't know what's going to happen. You're like, oh, well, that's a good idea. Oh, and then at the end, you're like, I went through all this to get here, and it's great. And it just makes you appreciate all that you just went through, and you're like, that was important. And the ending scene, just the way it ended, the way it transitions, gets you ready for the next, the whole next expansion, and how it drags you into it. Flawless, in my opinion. Absolutely flawless.
Yeah, I mean, it takes all of the different avenues of the story and just it all culminates into one sort of big, explosive finale almost.
Because obviously, we can kind of say it now. Warning to anyone who's not done A Realm Reborn: mute yourself. Mute us now quickly.
It's your warning.
I'll put a thumbs up when we're done with the spoiler. But so I'll give you a second there. The whole thing with like the Crystal Braves, and then obviously everything that went on with Uldar. If you were playing through, if you got to that, you'd be like, how the fuck did these two get connected if you wasn't paying attention? But if you're paying attention, you slowly start seeing it like build into each other till it locks. And that's just so good. Like people don't give A Realm Reborn enough credit. Like it was good story writing. It might not be as good as Heaven's Ward or Shadowbringers, but it was good.
If it wasn't for A Realm Reborn, we wouldn't have the stories we have. Because you got to think, like, 1.0 happened before that. And 1.0 had its own issues. There's a part of me that kind of wants, because I love that 1.0 story is still part of this game, but you don't get a lot from it because of its bad rap, which is fine. But the other part is like it's what they learned from 2.0 through 2.55 and beyond is what makes it constantly build up, and how they've refined. Like, it's one of those things is like a lot of the writers, a lot of developers grew as with that game in their skill and talent and with their creativity. That's where we get it, and so that's why we have the praise we do with the expansions that come up. And it's not that those were bad by any means, because I didn't know any of the story from Heaven's Word. I didn't get the Heaven's Word is better when I was really playing, because I was playing fresh with someone, and that does help. Although there were some things that kind of were some whispers, but I kind of was like, I really enjoyed the story, like just raw. If I just, without knowing anything, A Realm Reborn story overall, the raw feeling I got from it was like, okay, this is a good story game. And it just keeps going up from there, in my opinion. It really does, and it really works.
Wogga Dogger says, am I committing an MMO sin by playing with a controller? No, you are not. If that's
a lot
what you're
of the main guys did it.
My healer in my Savage static actually uses a controller, and we all obviously take the piss out of her, especially as I'm a PlayStation person, so you think I'll be playing with control, but I play with keyboard and mouse because it's just what I'm used to because of World of Warcraft. But she's comfortable playing a controller, and we've seen her in keyboard and mouse, and she cannot play for shit. So if you're more comfortable on a controller, you play in controller. Don't let anyone tell you can't.
I think it's the Final Fantasy 14 stream itself, when they do the duty commenced, she's been playing with controller almost every time I've jumped in and watched, and she's on that team and everything. So yeah.
Oh yeah, thumbs up. I forgot about that. Raya, if you haven't heard what we responded to you, not Raya, Wogger, if you haven't heard what we've responded to, we just said it a few minutes ago. Yes, controller is fine. I forgot to thumbs up for the spoilers. I had one more thing to say before we move into the final part because time is. We said we'd have you for 2 hours, and we're kind of running into that. So
I have a little flexibility, no worries.
my last thing that I'd say, as it sort of ascertains to A Realm Reborn, is for those who are even getting further in the story. 6.1, not 6.1. Yeah, 6.1. I think Endwalker is 6.0. 6.1 to 6.5 will be setting up for the future of the story. I would very much advise that you maybe treat it a little like A Realm Reborn. I have a feeling they'll do it a lot better, but it is setting up more story for the future. So it's going to be that very slow burn kind of experience again, just like A Realm Reborn was, at least from, what it should be like. Like, it's setting up more lore for the future. So treat 6.1 onwards with the same kind of energy that you treat A Realm Reborn. Like, take it slow, don't burn yourself out. It's very much going to be that kind of story from what I've gathered. So that's my last piece of advice for players. Oh, and all the people who are, new players, Sprouts, enjoy the story, enjoy it all. Every single little moment that you have in this game. If I could have my first moments back in FF14, I'd pay anything for that. I remember my first experience of the game, walking around Gridania as I think I was an archer, and that character didn't stick because I made a new one. I didn't like the character, but just that experience of walking around, I still remember it, in awe of everything. Like, oh my god, this is all brand new. Like, you will never get that experience back, so don't take it for granted. And I think everyone else can agree to that. Like,
I do agree. Yes, my first moments again with that game, especially nighttime Ul'dah. I love nighttime Ul'dah.
So as we start to wrap up, I'm going to give you a chance, Devin, to let people know where to find you, what you do on your channel, and what plans you have for the future of your channel.
Right. So I know the timing of this for me, there's a lot of stuff going on in my life, like I'm trying to move and stuff. So, but I do stream on Twitch. I have at first was doing a bit more variety stuff, but now have played a lot of 14 as pretty much the core game heading to my channel, while we do try to dabble into some other games. It's on Twitch, TheDevinAspect, as it's listed. I do have YouTube and other things that will eventually later come with some stuff, but it has been put on hold until I get everything else situated right now. I usually play late at night because it's when my kids and everyone go to bed. So it's a good time to hang out and chill. And any new players or anything like that, 14, always welcome. With that, that's exactly what we do on my channel. Just a really cool, positive environment that we try to have.
And we will be putting your links to your channels and stuff in our description on the YouTube video for anyone watching this on YouTube later down the line. We'll go to Unilogics next. Let people know what you are doing and where they can find you, because you've started streaming yourself.
Yeah, so you can find me here on PCG, occasionally streaming Destiny 2. It's a little bit erratic at the moment, but that's just because of the current event and, me playing a lot of Final Fantasy, other things. And, I hope to stream some other games in the future as well.
And Slandy, where can people find you?
You can find me on YouTube for the most part, and here on Pretty Casual Game as well. So
Slandy's YouTube is Sland Plays, by the way.
Yeah,
We'll have everyone's descriptions of where they can find you within the description and in the YouTube video. I obviously can be found here at Pretty Casual Gaming. I have my own Twitch channel that I use to moderate the channel, but I actually don't do anything on my Twitch channel. I have my own YouTube channel, but I don't use that. You'll find most of my VODs at the Pretty Casual Gaming YouTube channel as well. So if you ever need to find me, you can find me either of them. We do have a Discord that you can join for notifications. It will be in the description of the YouTube video, or you can find it on our Twitch information, I believe. Logics, you've done that? Yes. So you can find it there.
You can do ! YouTube or Discord to get links to those as well.
Yes. For the future of what I'm doing on the channel, obviously I started my Path to Endwalker Final Fantasy XIV Shadowbringers side quest streams recently, and I intend to do them. I'm not rushing them because I have about a month still to go before my next plans for a series. So they'll probably come out another one maybe this week, and then another one next week, and kind of like that, at least for the foreseeable future. I might do two in one of the weeks and another one, because then at the end of this month, I plan on streaming Kenna Bridges Spirits when that comes out, and I will be streaming that pretty much the moment I wake up on the day that it comes out. Until I finish it, my aim is to, there's not going to be a break in that except for when I sleep, eat, or need to go to the loo. So you will find me streaming that at the end of the month. We obviously do podcasts. Our intention for our next podcast will be what our dream game would be. That would be obviously me, Slandy, and Logix. I don't think we have any other plans, as Slandy might be moving his FF videos onto Pretty Casual Gaming. Logic's trying to put as many of his just random download streams that he's done onto the Pretty Casual Gaming channel for YouTube, so there'll be plenty there to find and watch. If you missed it, I did a whole series of Haven, which was my first series that I played on Twitch, and you can find that whole series now at the YouTube. That's like 13 hours worth of content, just if you need something on in the background. And obviously we have 10 podcasts before this. As we said, join Discord. If you haven't already, please follow us at the Twitch. For anyone on YouTube, that's www.twitch.tv/prettycasualgaming. We're almost affiliate, and so we're looking really forward to that, being able to add channel points onto the thing and interactions for people to actually interact with us. If you haven't, you can go find us on our YouTube for VODs. We always try to upload at least our series and our podcast there, and whatever other interesting things we can fit in the time of editing. That's Slandy and Logic's side of things, so I thank them both for that, because I'm terrible with computers. I don't think there's else other than that, so I'd like to thank Devin for coming on. He was fantastic to have on, and it was great having you on.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun, so you're awesome.
And I just want to say that maybe in the future, once Logix has finished Heavensward, we can reconvene, and perhaps even with Devin again. That would be great to do a Heavensward version of this.
I would love that, because I would love to talk Heavensward with Logix after he's done, that's for sure. Everyone, I'm sure, would love to hear Logic's take on Heavensward.
Definitely. And I even have had conversations with Logix about us maybe doing a Stormblood, shadowing as an eventual Endwalker version of this episode, revisiting all of the past expansions. So thank you everyone for watching, and we will all catch you in our next videos. Bye everyone.